Hi, ladies and gentlemen. So this week you are reading a poem written by Christina Rossetti. It's one of my favorite poems. I know I said that about the Rime of the Ancient Mariner, and while I don't think this poem beats out my love for Rime of the Ancient Mariner, it is a great, interesting tale. And we're gonna really get into it here in just a moment. So we're reading Goblin Market by Christina Rossetti. It is a longer poem, which is why it's the only poem or the only thing that we're reading this week. You're also going to have a writing assignment on this text. So some basic facts about Christina Rossetti. She was the youngest child born to an exiled Italian patriot for her father and an Anglo-Italian mother. The house was kind of a gathering place for other exiles to meet and to talk and to discuss things, and it was a very lively, wonderful place to be. And so Christina and her brothers were really exposed to a sort of more political discussion and social discussion than she would have, had she been allowed in school or had she been educated at the top universities. She really got a good sense of what was going on in the world through these discussions with other people who weren't from England. She developed early on a love for art and literature. Part of that was from this background that she had. She started to draw and write poetry very early on. And it's something that she continued throughout her life. Her life did change quite significantly when her father became an invalid. Her father had previously wrote poetry and commentaries about Dante Alighieri, who of course wrote, he was the Italian writer who wrote the Divine Comedy with Dante's Inferno and Purgatory and Paradiso. He wrote those, and so her father wrote commentaries on that. And he tried to bring out ancient conspiracies that Dante had written about in his poems. And her mother worked as a governess too, and so they were pretty well educated, the children of theirs. So the father became an invalid, and their house was no longer financially solvent if they ever really were secure in their finances, and this put a tremendous strain on the household and their ability to continue living as they had previously. So she became the mother and Christina, after the father became invalid, they became deeply involved in the church. They became involved in the Anglo-Catholic movement of the Church of England that was going on at the time. Rossetti, because of all this stress and all this strain, her health really starts to deteriorate, and she struggles day to day. She never married, although she was engaged a couple of times. She did break those engagements off because of religious beliefs. She was very involved with charitable work, and her first real volume of poetry was titled Goblin Market and Other Poems, but the most famous of these is Goblin Market, of course, which is what we're going to be reading. So Goblin Market had gained early popularity as a moral fable for children, but later, since then, it has really been compared by critics to Coleridge's Rime of the Ancient Mariner, because it has a deeper, more complex meaning. While it's a surface, it's this fable for children to teach them a lesson. If you really look between the lines, you can gain a lot more knowledge out of there, and there's a lot of allegorical instances that you just don't see on the surface. So as we're reading this, there's a couple things that you need to keep in mind. In England, goblins are associated as the stealers of children. They're little twisted men that are up to no good. They also are sometimes associated with sexuality. which we're not going to really get into, but that is another component to this poem that some critics have seen inside the text. This poem does have a certain seduction quality, but again, we're not going to talk too much of the sexual connotations of that poem. It's just not something that I feel comfortable talking to high school students with. There's also a drug quality. Look at the fruit, see what all is said about them, the cravings, the intense desire, the addiction to it. You're also going to definitely see a theme of sisterly love in here. There are a lot of biblical references in this poem. You see forbidden fruit, temptation, the fall, redemption. If you read Revelation 18 and Matthew 7, you're going to see a lot of associations with this poem. You also are going to see possibly the loss of innocence, something that tempts you over and over again, but you can only do it one time. The goblin men are going to silence Laura, and when Lizzie conquers them, she silences them, but first they try to get their way with her. It's possible that Rossetti is commenting on a patriarchal society. It's also important to note that there's a couple words in here. I should have put them up here so you can see that are kind of unfamiliar, especially if you grew up in America and not England. But a bullace is a wild plum. A greengage is in the plum family, and a rattle or rattle, or it's R-A-T-A-L, that's a badger. So keep those in mind. If you have any questions, please let me know. I really hope you enjoy this poem, and I really hope that you do your writing assignment with the utmost concentration and care, and I really look forward to reading those. But if you have any questions or problems, please let me know.